Guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to fly further range with your Geprc Mark5. It's going to have GPS on the back, so make sure you have that one. We're going to talk about how to set it up inside Betaflight, and I'm going to also give you some tips on which batteries to fly to get the longest range out of your Mark5. Before we do that, we're going to talk about our giveaway on the channel. So if you'd like to win a free 5-inch, we are giving away a Catalyst Machine Works America. So make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Let us know where you're from and you'll be entered to win. Make sure you don't reply to anyone that says you won in the comments, because we will never comment on this video or any other giveaway video to let you know that you won. We will announce it in a live stream. So that's coming up on July 24th for that giveaway, for that Catalyst Machine Works. This is a 6S FPV racing and freestyle drone. So pretty sick. Let's go ahead and get started with the first couple tips of flying long range, the longest range you can get with your Geprc Mark5. So first thing you need to know is which types of batteries to be flying to get the longest range out of your Mark5. It's not going to be the LiPo. These motors are rated for 6S, which makes them a lower KV, more of a candidate for flying a Lion style battery. If you have a Mark5 that has, say, 2450 kV, over 2000 kV is going to be a little bit too much amp draw for something like a Lion battery. And the point of flying Lion is, well, keeping the stick, your throttle stick, at the lowest point you can, just to keep the nose of the quad up and flying in the direction that you can fly. That way you'll get the longest flight time. And in our experiences, the best flight times we're getting out of these Lion type of batteries. Now I'm going to talk about what size to put on the Mark5. Now, one of the things you guys need to know about flying Lions is that in Betaflight, you need to have the average cell voltage on the screen in your OSD. That is just the average of all of the cells together, because you can fly these cells down on a Lion lower than what you can typically on a LiPo. You can get down to 3.8 volt on a LiPo, but you can run these down supposedly to about 2.6 volt per cell. So we can get quite a bit more range out of Lions, but you're not going to do high throttle with these Lions because it'll eat up the battery faster. So if you do a more consistent lower mid-range throttle on a Lion, this pack will be really good to you, and you'll be amazed at how low your voltage moves. I mean, just barely, like volts out of barely anything looks like it's coming out of your battery. And you look and you've already been flying for 15 minutes. It's kind of a cool thing. So these discharge very slowly, which is really great for long range, especially for FPV fixed wing and 7-inch when you get into this bigger category. Now today we're just talking about the Mark5 and just how to get a longer flight time out of that using Lions. So you're gonna watch that voltage, that single per cell voltage. Now don't fly down to 2.6. That's like the nominal voltage. Now you could fly down to about 3 volt, but you need to be back to the home point at 3 volt. And then once you're back to the home point and you land, you'll see on the OSD, once you kill the throttle and there's no power in your motors, you'll see, say, 3 volt jump up to like a resting voltage of 3.2 volt, sometimes even like 3.3 depending, but you will have a higher kind of ending voltage on the battery once you kill the throttle and the motors are turned off. So what you see on the screen while you're flying may actually be a little more when you get back to the ground and turn the quad off. So that's a good thing. So, but typically you want to be back to the home point at 3.1 to 3 volt for the safe size, or just be close to your general landing area, because when a Lion dies, these die really fast and you'll just fly straight down to the ground. Unlike a LiPo will just give you a little more, maybe a couple more 100 yards, the Lions will just drop you right to the ground when they're done. When they're done, they're done. So be back at the home point and you'll be good to go. Now we're going to talk about some of the popular sizes to put on this size quad. If you were to fly these on a 7-inch, you can fly a 4000 milliamp on a 7-inch. And again, these are Lion packs. They're not the LiPo, what we see, which is great for high amp draw, like super fast FPV racing or freestyle. These are great. Some of the R-line tattoos are great, but for long range, longer flights, you want to be able to just keep the nose of the quad up at the lowest stick throttle minimum as you can. That way you'll get a more efficient battery draw from the motor and the power system. So that's going to give you a longer flight time, and that's the point of long range FPVs. Works the same way with fixed wing. Now, our battery recommendations for the Mark 5 are going to be something like 4,000 milliamp pack. This is a 4S one, and just so you know, you can fly a 4S pack on this Mark 5 as well as 6S. So you can experiment by getting some 4S ones. If you want a little more cruisy type of feel, 4S will still work just fine if you have some of these laying around. Test them out and see what kind of flight time you can get out of it. I guarantee you're just about going to be able to double the flight time out of one of these packs versus one of your, say, 1300 6S packs on the Mark 5. The next one that I might recommend is somewhere in the 6S 3000 milliamp range for a Lion. Also 3500s are good. And since this quad has what we call the truck bed, it has a long body in the center here, and it does have enough room to accommodate almost up to like a 4,500 milliamp pack on here. But if you go too heavy and too big, once you get up past the weight threshold of the power system, you start to lose flight time. So it's the kind of the weight balance between the power system, the amp draw, and what your cargo load is on the quad. So don't go too heavy, but what I recommend is somewhere between the 3,000 milliamp range all the way up to, say, close to 4,000 milliamp range. Now, the big question a lot of people have is, which one should I fly? Should I fly TBS Crossfire, or should I fly ELRS for long range? Well, on this channel, as of mid-2025, I still do prefer TBS Crossfire. It's more tested for me. I've flown it the longest, around almost 11 years now. It has been very, very reliable to me. Now, this is the full-blown Crossfire module with the screen on there. They have this available now. It's called the light version. Very similar. It may not go all the way up to 2 watt, but it should get you 1 watt, which will get you probably further than this quad's going to go. So most times in long-range FPV, you're actually going to run out of camera signal first, video transmitter back to your goggles, before you run out of receiver signal. So these will go very far, but you shouldn't be flying at range without GPS setup and field tested. So that's one of the other things you're going to do, is you're going to fly out at a little bit of distance, test your return to home to make sure this GPS, once your receiver fail-safes, that this actually does work. And you want to also have it on a switch. Usually I label my switches with a little bit of colored tubing on the end here, so that I know exactly where it is and I can feel where it is, and I have a visual as well. All right, so now we're going to talk about antennas, and we're going to get to the beta flight setup on this. So if you made it this far in the video, you're probably serious about wanting to learn how to fly the furthest with your Mark 5. Now, I want to take you over to a friend of mine's website who has been instrumental in the long range genre for a very long time. His name is Alex, and we're going to check out Video Aerial Systems. Now, there are a couple different types of antennas that you want to look at. Number one is the antennas for your goggles and the antennas for your quad. You can also build up a ground station. This is one of Alex's early setups, and this is running 1.3. That was probably my go-to standard for about 11 years for FPV wings, long range 7-inch. And you can also do something like a 5.8 relay, which takes the 1.3, converts it down to 5.8, and back to your standard goggles. Pretty cool that you can do that. This one has straight up 1.3 on it, and it's a dual pepper box setup. So it not only has one pepper box, it has dual, providing a pretty narrow beam, but a very, very powerful signal path back to where you're flying from. So very important to get yourself a tripod setup. I have this one on a tripod right here. I do know that he still makes these, and he also makes them in 2.4. So you can play around with these different types of signals for getting the furthest distance. And this might be something that you use on a much larger aircraft, fixed wing or FPV wing or something like that, maybe a 60-inch. But if you want my opinion about how to go the furthest, I would say go for the analog FPV systems. They will get you out there, not on the Mark 5, but there are people who have got out there 100+ kilometers. So you can get very far, and there's a whole lot of ways to do that. but you really have to do a lot of flying and a lot of experimentation to make it out at those distances, which those guys have put in the time to do that. So over on Alex's website, for guys that are flying right now, his newest antenna that he released for 5.8, if you have a Mark 5 with 5.8 on there, these are some great antennas. 5.8 Avenger RX16, super awesome style, brand new antenna with a very more like a narrow directional type of beam, but it's going to give you a really solid signal. So that means if the beam is more narrow, if you fly out of the path of signal, you're going to start getting some glitchy video, and you're going to start to get some fuzz in the video. Once you make it back to the path, which is a straight out line from where your tripod or your goggles are going to be, you'll be back into your signal path. And you'll learn about that as you're experimenting and flying with something like an Avenger RX16. But very, very high gain. Also like 16.5 dBi. So very, very powerful antenna right there. And the flight beam on that is about 44 degrees. And the frequency range on this is 5200 to 64 megahertz, covering the whole 5.8 spectrum. And on his website, you can see some graphs on the different type of beams and the degrees of pitch which these beams do go out into the atmosphere. And all these antennas are tried, true, and tested by Alex and his team. Alex knows a lot about frequency and radiation. Now, if you're looking for something on 1.3, you want to set up an analog 1.3 system, you could also do that on the Mark 5. We have the 1.3 pepper box on the 1.3 antennas page, and that would be something that you could set up on your ground station, very similar to this big guy over here. He's just consolidated that a lot. This a little harder to hike into if you're going up to a mountain spot to get up on the top of a cliff and perch. This is a little more portable, allowing you to kind of put this inside a backpack and take it up the mountain. But this one also has a really nice flight beam on it, horizontally 165 degrees and 65 degrees on the vertical. Again, like a really high gain antenna at 13.25 dBi. Now let's talk about going out for your first location where you're going to experiment flying a little bit of range flying. And that's what we call it when you're first starting out. Flying at range is not typically considered long range. I mean, even some people consider 5 miles long range or 10 miles long range. It just depends on who you are. And long range is debatable. Some people in Russia would call long range 150 kilometers. None of you guys are probably going to be flying 150 kilometers. If you are, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to meet you. But for the Mark 5, we're going to be talking about miles, 2 to 5 miles out. And a lot of it has to do with how much battery you have and power available on board, how far you can go out and how far you can come back. And one of the main things you want to do after you have a nice wide open space where if you fail safe, you could just drive up to it and pick it up. You can start experimenting with a little bit longer range in what we call mountain surfing. Mountain surfing is a ton of fun. It's flying up and down the face of a mountain, going all the way up to the peak, coming all the way back down through the trees and finding those lines on the way back down to make spectacular GoPro video. And one of the things that I always tell people to do, position yourself somewhere up high and fly high to low. I know that may be a little bit hard to do depending on where you live in the mountains, and I've seen a lot of guys fly from the bottom up. I don't really prefer to fly from bottom up because there's a lot more chance to lose signal flying from the bottom up in my experiences. Now, this is over 11 years of flight experience in the mountains. Even with TBS Crossfire, there are moments when we'll fail safe and you'll see the quad do this. And if your GPS is set up correctly, you'll see your quad in acro, and then all of a sudden it'll just go boop, it'll flatten out for a second, and then when it catches signal again, it'll go back to acro mode. So be ready for that. If your quad's doing this a little bit, it's probably fail safing. So keep an eye on the upper left or right hand side of your screen where you do have your signal strength. Very important to put your signal strength up on the screen as well. But one of the general rules of flying long range is keep a nice line of sight between you and the quad. As you go out, the number one general rule of long range is to fly higher as you go. So in increments, you're flying higher as you go, but you're still maintaining that signal path, that line of sight signal path back to your ground station. If you put objects, mountains, and buildings and things in between you and your quad, you interrupt that signal path, right, coming back to your ground station. So you may see things happen like fail safes and say fuzzy video, but it might momentarily come back if you fly out from behind that object again. Okay, so now we're going to set up your Mark 5 inside Betaflight to get the most range out of it for your Lion. And we're going to set up the OSD, the GPS return to home, and all that good stuff. So go ahead and grab a data cable, a USB-C cable, turn on your radio, and grab whatever flight battery you're going to grab and plug that in. Take the props off, of course. We're going to let it completely load up, do the chime, and then we're going to go ahead and plug it in. And we're going to go inside Betaflight. One of the first things that we need to do is just make sure that our receiver is working. We do have a full tutorial on this quad already on the channel, but go to the receiver tab, check all of your channel maps. Roll should go left, right like that, pitch up and down, and on the yaw axis left and right here, as well as throttle up and down, and check all your switches as well. We only use about 4 switches on this particular setup, even for long range. So you'll need about 4 auxiliaries set up. So now it has a GPS lock. That was pretty fast. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to fail safe, and we're going to make sure that GPS rescue is selected here, as well as configuration. Go down to where you see other features. And one of the first thing you need to do is just make sure that GPS is turned on. If it's not turned on, you won't even be able to get to anything inside the GPS tab once we go there. So once that's turned on, go ahead and save and reboot for GPS tab. Now that's active. Now inside the ports as well, we're going to make sure that we have GPS on UART5. So this needs to be turned on for the sensor input. Once we have that there, we can also save and reboot. You don't need to turn on MSP or anything like that on UART5, just like that. So now we're going to go down to the modes tab. We need to have it on a switch. So it has a couple different ways it can work. It can low battery return, it can do it on a switch, and it can also return to home on a signal failure. So go ahead and scroll down to where you see GPS rescue. Say it wasn't there, I'm just going to take it off. We're going to add range. We're going to put it on aux4, again, which is the SD switch, which is that red piece of tubing that I have over top of my switch there. And I use a 2-position switch because if I want it to activate, I want it to immediately activate. If it's an emergency, I don't want to have it on a 3-position switch because I may miss it. So we're going to slide that slider all the way out to the outside. We're going to press save. And once we press save, we should be able to see that gold bar move. That's the beeper. So now SD switch all the way out. It is working properly. Okay. So now beeper as well. We want to have that on aux3. That works. And I also have an electronic beeper as well. So I have a physical beeper and electronic beeper as a redundancy. You can also buy these little tiny external beepers, which are great. I believe iFlight makes some of them. I'll try to put a link down below for an external beeper. You wire it up through the 5-volt on your flight controller, and if you crash and your battery flies off, it'll beep for like 2 days. It's pretty awesome. So the rest of this is going to be just fine. So now we're going to go down to GPS, and on this window right here, you need to have protocol set to U-blocks. We're also going to have auto config there. You don't have to have a Galileo. Set home point once. We're going to leave that off because we want it to try multiple times. Before you take off, make sure that you have a home point selected and that GPS return to home is active. If not, it will say on your OSD, your GPS failsafe is not active. So if you see that pop up on the screen, that means that your GPS return to home is not set up properly. And when you do fail safe, that you'll fail safe to the ground, you'll drop, okay? Because that is the default if GPS is not set up. Very important. So you need to see that you have signal strength here. You should see some green bars, satellite IDs there, the status and the quality, as well as your 3D fix up top should say true at some point. Gives you the number of satellites. Right now I have 14, even though I'm indoors, and this is that brand new M10 upgraded GPS. Up at the very top of Betaflight as well, you should see a gold icon of a GPS. That means that your GPS is active on your quad. So very important that you see that. Now let's go ahead and jump into the OSD setup and what you need to have on your screen if you're flying at range with the Mark 5. Now, one of the most important things that you need to have on your Mark 5 or any other quad that you're flying at range or even fixed wing is the longitude and latitude at the top of the screen or somewhere on your screen. Now, if you fail safe down into the side of the mountain, maybe just your battery dies and you fall into the cliffs. If you have longitude and latitude on the screen, you can pull up your OSD. Always record every single flight on your goggles as well, not just on the quad, but on the goggles as well when you're flying at range. And then you can use a GPS tracker app to go to that latitude and longitude, and then you can go basically walk right up to your drone. So very important to have that in case you need that. You can download the apps on your phone to put in GPS coordinates, latitude and longitude on your phone app. So very cool to go find something off in the woods. And the external beeper also helps. Once you get close, you can hear that external beeper chime as well. If the battery did stay on your quad, then you'll be lucky enough to be able to walk up to it and hopefully hear it and find it that way. So up at the top left hand of my screen, you can see I have my link quality there. And that is one of the first things that I want to see, is how much quality for my link back to my transmitter. Very important. My number of satellites, I want to see that pretty quick. Usually this quad links up in about a minute's time. The home point, the average meters from the home point, you can change that to imperial as well, and that'll give you like kind of a feet instead of meters if you want. And you can change that back to metric or British, and I enjoy metric, so I leave mine to meters. Just makes more sense to me when I'm flying drones. We also have the mode that we're in, angle, very important. The fly minutes, I always put fly minutes on there. I like to have this one here is the throttle, so this is telling me what type of throttle percentage I'm at out of 100, and that way I can find that sweet spot, that lowest throttle input, to keep the nose up and headed in that direction. Also have my full battery voltage here, as well as my average cell voltage per cell voltage. That is where this is the secret sauce of flying Lions at range. Very important to have that on the screen, because that's mostly what you're going to be looking at when you're flying range. You could probably even take the total voltage, battery voltage off screen, and just look at your single cell voltage. Up at the very center of the screen, I always like to have it up at the very top. This is the home arrow. It shows us which way back to home. It gives us sort of a visual. So when I'm out and I'm kind of over off to one side or the other, I can fly back in the direction of where I'm actually sitting. Makes a lot of sense to me, and helps me out sometimes find my direction back home. Now at the very bottom, we have warnings. We also have the name of the quad. You can change it to your pilot name if you want to. Also, depending on whether you're flying analog or HD, you have the video format there, usually set to auto for analog, or say PAL NTSC. For HD, that'll change everything on the screen here for guys that are flying something like, say, Walk Snail, HD0, or DJI. Now also, we can turn on and off a lot of these warnings down here if we want to, but we want to leave all these GPS ones on as well. And a little bit further down, you can see throttle position, timer 1 and timer 2. Timer 1 is just how long the battery is plugged in, so I typically don't use that one. And all of our warnings are on down at the very bottom. Very important there. And that is about what you need for the OSD for flying long distance a range with your Mark 5 as far as your OSD is concerned. And now you want to click save and go back and look at this changes inside your goggles to make sure everything looks right and everything is on the screen. If it's not on the screen, you can grab on things and drag and drop things inside the OSD screen here, and then click save again after you make a change. Now, one of the last things we need to do is we need to go to power and battery, because the Lions, again, like we explained before in this video, that you're going to be able to fly these down lower. So in your power and battery setting on this, you'll have a different lower warning on this particular voltage. Now, the minimum cell voltage currently set to 3.2. I can turn that all the way down, and you want to do this too, because you're going to get warnings on the screen earlier than you typically would. You know, you're going to be flying, say, another 10 or 12 minutes with this particular Lion setup, and it's going to be annoying because you're going to have that warning on the screen early. So we want to turn that down to about 2.8. You could put it at 3 if you want to. That'd be super safe. If you fly down to like 2.8, you can expect a hot battery when you land. So be careful about that, especially in the summertime. So you could put it to about 3 just to be safe. The warning cell voltage here is way high right there. So that is the third one down from the top. We're just going to turn that one down to 3 volts right there. Click save. And now when you're flying that Li-ion battery, it's not going to start warning you 10 minutes ahead of time. It's going to be a little more enjoyable, and that'll be the perfect setting for your Li-ion battery. All right, so another one in the books for the Mark 5, how to fly a little longer range with your Mark 5 using a Li-ion pack. And sort of the secret sauce in a lot of these different long range drones, like the ones behind me, is that they are running lower kV motor systems, which allow you to use something like a Li-ion. If you have a high powered, high kV motor, a lot of times it's going to be too powerful for a Li-ion, and they don't like to be stressed with high throttle inputs. So keep that in mind. Also, it's really interesting to see, once you start flying some Li-ion packs with these low kV, sub 2000 kV motors, it's really interesting to just see your voltage sit there for a very long time. And one of the things about Li-ions is that they will maintain a voltage for longer than you'll expect. And it's wild. And when you get somewhere 3/4 of the way through this Li-ion battery, it's a strange phenomenon, because what happens is they do start to drop a lot faster. The voltage really drops off at the last quarter of the battery down to your 3 volt per cell, because it's just the chemistry is different than our LiPo batteries. So when you're flying LiPos, they usually get you back to the home point a little safer at the low end of the battery. They're not going to kill the throttle as much, where a Li-ion will really put you on the ground at the very last quarter of the battery. So be back at the home point around that last quarter of your battery, especially if your battery is getting a little older. The Li-ion packs, once they get older, they will let you down, so to speak, a lot quicker. So just be conscious of that when you're flying those, and you'll have a good time. Just keep some fresh Li-ions on hand. Make sure you're back at the home point at that 3 volt level, and by all means, field test your GPS return to home. Always fly with GPS. Always try to have a line of sight between you and whatever aircraft you're flying at range. And always record the DVR on your goggles. Because if you have a problem and you don't have that lat and longitude up at the top of the screen, you might not be able to find your quad. And the next big suggestion is always put that external beeper on there. The external beeper, a lot of the quads don't come with them now, but that will save you. Because again, like if your battery flies off, this thing is dead in the weeds. It won't beep for you at all. You'll be switching your beeper switch, you'll hear nothing. So make sure you use an external beeper if you're really serious about flying range. So hopefully the tips in this video helped you out, sort of understand how we fly long range a little bit better. And if you want to subscribe on the channel, you'll learn even more tips and all kinds of stuff. I have tons of information to share with you guys. So again, I appreciate you for hanging out and learning something today on the Drone Camps RC channel, guys. I'm Justin Davis. Please do check out our links down below for the various long-range links and cool stuff for flying at long range. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.